The storm outside the diner seemed to press its weight against the old glass windows, as though trying to suffocate the tiny place from the outside in. Inside, the silence was thick, broken only by the low hum of the outdated refrigerators and the scratchy jazz music coming from a dusty wall speaker. And in that silence, as midnight crept in like a tired wanderer, a single moment sparked a chain of events no one in that diner would ever forget. It began when a billionaire, exhausted from a life everyone admired but few understood, sat at a corner booth to escape the noise of the world. And a waitress who was fighting her own battles made a mistake, one that would unravel years of buried grief, guilt, love, and healing. Before we go deeper into this emotional journey, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unexpected ways life reconnects us with the past. Your support helps us share more heartfelt stories like this one. The diner was almost empty when Lily Brooks noticed the man who had walked in without removing his expensive-looking coat. She recognized him instantly, although she tried to pretend she didn't. Ethan Caldwell, billionaire CEO, philanthropist, and the kind of man newspapers called a mysterious genius. She had seen his face on magazines at the grocery store, always with those same sharp eyes, the kind that looked like they saw opportunities where others only saw problems. But tonight, those eyes were dimmed, heavy, carrying something darker than simple exhaustion. Lily tightened her apron around her waist, trying not to let her nerves show. She was working a double shift, and her feet were screaming with pain. Her younger brother, who had been in and out of the hospital with heart complications, needed medication again. The bills were piling up. Every hour she worked mattered. The last thing she needed was to mess up a millionaire, or billionaire's, order. But fate had a strange way of making even the smallest mistakes meaningful, and tonight would prove that mistakes weren't always accidents. She approached Ethan's table with her usual warm smile, but even that smile trembled slightly. She handed him a menu, but he shook his head softly. He looked like a man who didn't have the energy for choices. "Just something warm," he muttered without looking up. Something in his voice made Lily pause. It was empty, almost hollow, as though whatever kept him going had cracked earlier that day. She nodded quickly and rushed back to the kitchen. In her exhaustion, her mind running faster than her feet, she grabbed the wrong order slip. Instead of the chicken soup he was supposed to receive, she served him a plate of golden brown meatloaf with creamy mashed potatoes, an item nobody had ordered in hours. When she placed the plate in front of him, she only realized her mistake when she reached the counter. Panic jolted her chest. She turned around instantly, ready to apologize, but froze when she saw him staring at the meal as if it were a ghost. His fingers tightened on the edge of the table, his shoulders stiffened, his breath visibly stopped. Lily hesitated, something tugging at her instincts. The diner felt too quiet, as if holding its breath for him. She approached carefully, afraid of upsetting him further. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "That's not what you ordered. I can replace it right away." But Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he pressed the heel of his hand against his eyebrow, swallowing hard. His jaw clenched so tightly she feared he might break. Then he whispered a sentence that changed everything. "This was my father's favorite meal." Lily felt her stomach drop. Not because the mistake upset him, but because the pain in his voice wasn't annoyance, it was grief. Deep, aged, suffocating grief. He picked up the fork slowly, his hands trembling. The meatloaf wasn't special. The mashed potatoes weren't fancy. But as he brought the first bite to his mouth, his entire face seemed to collapse on itself. His breathing hitched. Tears filled his eyes before he even tried to blink them away. Lily stood still, unsure if she should walk away or offer comfort. Something about the moment felt intimate, sacred, like touching an old wound he had kept stitched shut for years. Ethan set the fork down after a few seconds and leaned back, staring at the plate with a haunted expression. My father used to bring me to a diner just like this, every Sunday, even when he was sick, even when he could barely walk. His voice cracked as he exhaled shakily. And he always ordered this, every single time. Lily's heart clenched. She knew grief, the kind that creeps into your bones and stays there forever. She knew what it was like to lose something you fought to keep. She decided to stay beside him, even if it wasn't part of her job. As Ethan spoke, the storm outside intensified, lashing the windows as if echoing the storm inside him. He confessed that his father had passed away 3 years ago, and he had buried himself in work ever since. Billions meant nothing when weighed against the loss of the man who taught him what life really meant. He had avoided anything that reminded him of his father, and meatloaf was something he never touched again. Until tonight, until Lily's accidental order brought back a piece of a man he thought he had lost forever. Lily felt tears prick her own eyes, but something else tugged at her heart. The universe had a way of aligning small mistakes into meaningful intersections. She had brought him the wrong meal on the worst night of her week, maybe even her year. But for him, it had been the right moment to break open and breathe again. And then something even deeper surfaced. Ethan revealed that earlier that day, he had discovered a box of his father's letters that his father wrote but never sent. Letters where he apologized to Ethan for being absent, for being strict, for the pressure he placed on his shoulders. Letters filled with regrets he never spoke aloud. Letters signed with love he never heard in person. He had spent the entire evening wandering the city, unable to face his penthouse, unable to face the silence those letters created. That's what brought him to the diner, to escape his thoughts, to hide from the pain. But the wrong meal brought him face to face with the memory of a man he wasn't ready to grieve. Lily quietly asked him if she wanted her to stay with him until he finished eating. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. His silence felt like permission. So she stayed, standing quietly beside his booth, watching a billionaire crumble over a simple plate of food. Proof that wealth didn't shield anyone from the storm of loss. Minutes later, Lily excused herself to check on other tasks, and that's when she returned to the kitchen and realized she was about to cry. Her hands trembled. Something about Ethan's pain mirrored her own fears. Fear of losing her brother, fear of bills she couldn't pay, fear of watching life fall apart piece by piece. When she returned to his table, Ethan looked calmer, as though releasing those memories had unclenched something inside him. He looked up at her and asked softly, "Why do you look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders?" She froze. She never expected him to notice. Slowly, cautiously, she told him about her brother, the hospital bills, the struggle to keep up. She didn't want pity. She simply answered a question honestly. But Ethan listened the way a man listens when he knows what it feels like to hurt quietly. When she finished speaking, he didn't say anything for a long, thoughtful moment. Instead, he reached for his coat and pulled out a sleek business card. "I can help. Not because I pity you, but because sometimes life gives us people who understand exactly when we are breaking. And tonight, you helped me remember who I am." Lily shook her head, overwhelmed. She never wanted help from wealth, but something in him told her this offer wasn't charity, it was gratitude. Before he left the diner, Ethan turned back and looked at the plate one last time. "Thank you," he whispered, "for the mistake that wasn't a mistake." For weeks after that night, Lily's life slowly began to change. Ethan made sure her brother received the medical support he needed. He funded the surgeries, the treatments, the medications that Lily could never afford alone. But what touched him most wasn't the money. It was the way he checked in regularly, always asking, "How is he today?" Not, "How much do you need?" but, "How is he?" Slowly, healing became a shared journey between two wounded hearts. The diner became their meeting point, a quiet, unspoken place where memories lived.
Ethan would stop by sometimes just to sit in the same booth, to breathe in the nostalgia, to remember his father without breaking. One night, months later, he came in again. This time, he wasn't weighed down. This time, he smiled when he saw Lily. He ordered the same meatloaf, but now he ate it with gratitude instead of grief. And as she watched him, she realized something beautiful. Sometimes, the smallest mistake becomes the first step towards unexpected healing.